Welcome to the Better Agent Podcast. If you're a real estate agent that's looking to grow your business, then you're in the right place. Whether you want to go from 5 to 10 transactions a year, or 10 to 50 transactions per year, or more, well then this show is for you. I'm Josh Lavik, your host for the Better Agent Podcast, and in each episode, we'll bring you the tools, tips, and tricks directly from myself and some of the best leaders within the real estate industry. We have one goal in mind, and that's to boost your production and elevate your real estate game. Let's dive in and start creating a better real estate experience together. Welcome back to the Better Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lavik, and excited to have you on the show today, and excited to have a wonderful guest. Today is with me, Gordon Lamphere. He does a great commercial business in the Chicago area, but I don't want to say too much. I'll let Gordon maybe introduce a little bit more about yourself and your story.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me on the platform. I love podcasting, and I'm excited to be on with you today. I'd say overwhelmingly what we do is we really focus on meeting the needs of consumers and investors, predominantly in the office industrial space, but also we dive into retail and land deals as well. We're in such a crazy world right now, office, industrial, retail. There's tales of two cities all over. And so it's really a fascinating time to be in the business and great time to talk real estate.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that's part of my goal in this podcast is to have good people like yourself that are really doing business at a high level. And then also, my goal is to hopefully share some of my wisdom as well over the last 19 years that I've been in this business. I know one of the things I've definitely seen some changes. When I started, they still had a fax machine and you would fax offers back and forth. Now we're obviously in an email era, but certainly seen some changes over the years. And yeah, my goal in the show and for our listeners is really to help give them a little bit more nuggets and some tools and some direction, maybe if they're looking to just grow their business, right? So if they've done maybe a handful of deals one year, what do they got to do to maybe double or triple or quadruple that in the next few years? And what does that look like? And what are maybe some key things that you found to be successful? And then obviously I'm happy to share some of my thoughts on that as well. And I've noticed over the years of growing my business as well. And so that's kind of my thought for our episode today. So I guess with that in mind as kind of the overview of what we're hoping to do, maybe share with our listeners a little bit more about what you think is your superpower and what is it that you guys are really good at and that you think. I know you mentioned, office and industrial, but maybe go a little deeper on that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think our superpower is catering to the needs of small to mid-sized investors and occupiers. There's a lot of folks in the commercial space that do a great job at working with large hedge funds and large multinational organizations. We've certainly done that, and I can look out my window and see a multinational company that we actually even placed. But at the same time, that's not really what makes us special. What makes us special is really catering to that small to mid-sized business and small to mid-sized investor, that investor that has a portfolio of 5, 10, 15 assets, or that small to mid-sized business that's operating on a regional level. As a boutique firm, we can really do a great job of catering to them and their needs while also using our scale and our regional scale. And there's really a gap in the market for folks that serve particularly mid-sized businesses and give them all the needs that they would get with a large business, but have them be the whale client in whatever sector of the economy that they're in, be it logistics or pharma or medical devices or food. It's nice to be treated like you're that Fortune 500 company, even if you're just maybe barely on the edge of the Russell 2000, or you're a company that's in the process of growing. And I think that's what we really do well and what we've done well for the last 140 years.
Wow. 140 years. That's a long time. So that's when your firm first started in this commercial business?
So we started in 1879. We were originally developers and property managers for the Pullman development down in Chicago. And we've grown and expanded over the years. And one of the things that you notice when you have a company this old is there's a lot of creative destruction in the process, a lot of change, and things get reinvented every couple of years or every decade, and there are new processes, and I think that's great. And what's a great part of your podcast is you talk a lot about that creative destruction in the industry and a lot of that creative destruction in our lives as agents, because when you're going out and you're trying to do something, you have to understand that things are going to be different when you start to when the deal is complete. And in the last 5 to 10 years, you look at everything that's changed with Moore's Law, and the world is just modernizing, and you're seeing more and more use of AI. Internet is becoming increasingly important. And if you're a firm that's not changing with the times, you're just going to get left behind.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Absolutely. That was something I've noticed for sure. I mean, we've seen it locally. I'm in southern Wisconsin in the Madison area, and some of the firms, even just not necessarily real estate firm, but just other businesses too. Yeah, if they fail to adapt, they continue to struggle and eventually go down. So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess I'm more on the residential side is most of our business. And so I'm a little curious about maybe how you approach things in terms of the commercial side, and how do you maybe ensure that your clients get top-notch service, and a little more about maybe your sales process and that kind of thing.
So I think the interesting thing that's going on, and I don't think a lot of commercial firms want to admit this, is residential firms do certain aspects of the business way better than we have traditionally done it on the commercial side. Handling the consumer relationship or the client relationship, the residential side of the business, many of the top agents do it vastly superior to our end. They do a much better job of dealing with some of the emotional stress involved. They do a much better job of reaching out on their side for referrals. They sometimes do a much better job of prospecting and kind of understanding the digital marketing side of the business. What we on the commercial side do differently, I think, is we have much more typically of a financial and facilities background in terms of many of the assets we're working with, particularly on the industrial side, are highly complex. You have to understand the complexities of very well built out electrical systems, fire suppression. You have to understand logistics networks, and it's definitely a different side of the business. But what I find fascinating is that, and one of the reasons why I talk to so many residential brokers, is that you guys understand the consumer relationship in a way that we probably did, or sorry, you guys are probably 5 to 10 years ahead of us in terms of how you understand the consumer relationship and how you do things like your SEO prospecting, your blogging, some of the social media. You're 5 to 10 years ahead of us. And a lot of that is the nature of our business is so corporate that so many of the brokers that work in this business are so handheld, or I shouldn't say handheld, they're so restricted by their business. And if you work at any of the larger firms, they really don't give them a lot of room to play in terms of social media, creating personal brands. And you're just kind of starting to see that over the last 3 years, that you're having agents develop personal brands and kind of that personal touch with consumers that we haven't really seen until very recently in the commercial space.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's kind of interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I've done a handful of commercial deals over occasionally, and I've noticed there's definitely a difference in how some of, I don't know if old school is the right word, but that's how it feels. It feels like it's a little bit behind in some ways, of just in terms of how they operate in some ways, but in other ways I was light years ahead. Like, I don't even understand some of the complexity and the nuance that you guys are looking at in some ways that we don't deal with nearly as much as on the residential side. But yeah, as
for better or for worse, right? So
yeah.
Like, overwhelmingly, I think residential brokers that you can learn from us in some ways, like particularly some of the mechanical hardware and some of the physical nature of buildings and properties, and some of the legal side as well. I think that the commercial side does it better. But in terms of the actual relationship building side and some of the side of marketing and SEO, I'll say this definitively, I spend a lot of time learning from you guys, because you're typically at least 3 to 5 years ahead of our industry.
Well, that's part of our goal too in this podcast, right? Is try to reach more people in ways that they want to consume it and consume information, right? It's not always in the way, right? 10, 15 years ago, there was no podcasts hardly, so So here we are today, and times evolve. Well, cool. Well, let's see. So when did you remind me? When did you start in the commercial space? And tell me a little bit more on that background.
So that's kind of a tough question. And a lot of it's because I grew up in the business. So I'm a fourth generation broker.
Got it.
So in terms of that, I started working in the business, doing a variety of roles, both, back office, maintenance, all sorts of sections of the commercial real estate business. Many years before I started as a broker. Starting as a broker, I started in 2017. After graduating law school, I realized very quickly that I was not going to be happy as a lawyer. And as a result of that, I made the transition very quickly into what turned out to be a wonderful career. But I would say definitively, if you wanted to say like when I kind of started working generally broadly around the business, that probably would have been around 2008, 2009 when we saw the recession.
Sure.
And then if you look at when I actually started working as an agent, that would be 2017.
Got it. So 2017 after law school and kind of getting things going from there. So, okay. and just for some perspective, I guess I'm curious about how long do you think it took you to really start to feel like you were taking off and like business was really starting to grow for you? Or maybe what was something that happened around that time where you're like, okay, yeah, this is the right path, right? Because you already mentioned it, right? You're like, I don't want to be an attorney, but I want to be, this is the right path. When did you know that moment?
So I'd say it was probably 2000, maybe 19.
Okay.
And I think the funny thing is when you start off in our business, the start is really hard. It's really hard to start off. I think I remember, so I moved home and I was working and living in my childhood bedroom because I was making no commission money.
Yeah.
And it was rough because all your friends are working in law firms and many of them in big law and they're buying homes or nice cars. And you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I haven't even leased anything yet. And I'm making, 50, 100 cold calls a day. And, everyone's telling me to go F myself. And I don't know if this is going to work out. I can tell you the first transaction I ever did was for about 10 by 14 tiny little executive office. And I maybe made, $25 worth of commission, enough that maybe I could afford food for the weekend. And that was about it. And so I think that so many young brokers start off in a world where they don't know if it's going to work out. And you just have to take that leap of faith. For me, the biggest advantage that I found in the industry was because I was at a small shop and I was from a regional firm. I got on Twitter and started talking to people that were at other firms, just like your podcast. Sure. And I started to learn tricks and techniques that I could apply in my own industry, be it on SEO marketing, email outreach, cold calling, client outreach, how to get referrals. And then by about applying that for about a year, I then started to see real progress. And by the time 2020 rolled around, we were doing I was part of maybe 100 transactions a year. So you'd see a massive uptick in terms of how things were working. In terms of that, it all comes down to, I would say, finding people who know what they're doing. Yeah. And then the hardest part is actually applying it.
Totally. Yeah. Man, I really resonate with your story. I mean, I can tell you, for me, I started a little bit sooner than you, but it was a very similar story, right? I got licensed in 2005. Wasn't even sure if I wanted to do real estate, kind of did it sort of part-time, but I was making very little money. I worked a part-time job bartending just to make ends meet and whatnot. And then, but I remember also after about a year and a half in the business thinking, okay, like if we're going to do this, like let's hit the gas, let's freaking go. And I remember distinctly, my business took off, not exponentially right away, but it definitely improved immediately as soon as I kind of made that mental shift, started doing exactly what you're talking about, connecting with other top agents, going to different conferences, learning, just being a sponge. But it was, I think that commitment to kind of get through, this is hard. I don't know if I want to do it. Oh, I don't know if I can make it, right? You second guess yourself a lot, right? And I think a lot of agents go through that, right? If you can make it through, I was talking to someone else recently and they were saying like, if you can make it through year 5 in the business, the success rate is actually very high.
Yeah.
So it's the attrition rate before then is also very high. So unfortunately, so for whatever reason, but
Yeah, and the thing I always find interesting about that too is I wonder if you make it to year 5, you have the referral base or the network, or you've learned the skills that you can succeed, or if it's just the kind of people that make it to year 5 are the kind of people that can persevere anyway,
right.
and whatever that data, however you come to that data,
Yeah.
there's a tremendous amount of truth in it. All the brokers I know who've made it through one full cycle
Yep.
are always very effective at the craft in general, provide high levels of service, and really can put their nose to the grindstone.
Yeah, totally. So, all right, well, let's maybe reflect on that a little bit more, maybe dive into that, right? So what if I'm an agent and I've done a handful of deals and I wanted to try to ramp it up to that 100 deal a year mark, or even 50 or 40 or whatever it is, if I've only done 5 to 10 deals and I want to go to 20 or 30, what do you think are some of the key skills that an agent needs to develop if they wanted to maybe double their business in the next year?
I'd say the number one skill is you have to be told and understand that being told no is just a normal part of the day, right? So I'm told no typically 20 times for every yes. And that doesn't mean that you kick down the door, right? I think there's this misunderstanding in the industry that
Sure.
you just want to keep pressing somebody to try to get a sale, and that's a horrible idea, because overwhelmingly people say no because they don't want to participate, and our whole business is to try to find that yes. I think overwhelmingly you just have to accept, like today, I have a client that I lined up from warm calling from people who had interacted with us in some form or another. And
Sure.
I got around 70 this morning no's.
Okay.
Which is 70. But I got one yes. And that one yes is going to end up being a transaction, being probably a 10 to 15,000 foot industrial transaction. So you see that a lot. And I think you have to be very happy with taking no for an answer, writing it down, understanding that maybe you can come back to this person, but just at the very most important, you just brush it off and move on. And the agents that I see that fail the most often are the ones that take customer interactions personally. And what you have to do is understand and put yourself in their shoes, empathize with your customer, and understand that, like, this is one of the biggest transactions of their entire life or their business's life.
For sure.
There's a lot of emotional stress involved, and that the way in which they behave with you is not always the way in which an ordinary person would behave with you at church, or at a family gathering. And so you just have to brush off that emotional stress and move on.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, I don't know if I didn't go through 70 no's to get a yes today. So I congratulate, props to you on that. But I've definitely experienced a lot of rejection. And yeah, I totally understand. That's a part of the process. And I know one thing I've sort of mentally said to myself, right? No doesn't mean like take it personally. It's like there's nothing against me. It just means maybe not yet, right? Now is not the time, but tomorrow could be, next month, next year, in 5 years, who knows, right? And so at least for me, what I've found is like, it's just continuing to maybe stay in touch with and nurture some of those relationships. And so that if and when the time does come and they do have a need to make a change in their home life or their business life or whatever, that hopefully they think of you and they're like, you know what, you were really helpful last time I talked to you. And, even though we didn't do business last month or a year ago, you were helpful and you were nice on the phone. And if you're providing some type of value, and then they'll come back to you. But yeah, if you push too hard for that, yeah, that's a clear way to get a blocked call, right? You'll never talk to that person again.
And the most important thing is when someone says no too, is to ask why.
Yeah.
Just if someone's like, no, and then you just simply say, look, could I ask you why? Because sometimes people will say, and sometimes people will say, no, F you. And then you're just like, okay, this is a number I probably never want to call back again. But you have plenty of times where people say, no, because I just signed a lease and I've got 6 more years left on that lease. And sometimes you can even ask the person, hey, what's that date? And they're, oh, yeah, it's in June or blah, blah, blah. Mark a little bit in your calendar. And you'd be surprised all the times already in my career. You've had enough time pass where then you make that call and they go, oh, yeah, we'd love to grow, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And
June's right around the corner. That'll be there. That'll be here in no time.
and so I think overwhelmingly you start to see those patterns,
Yeah,
and the business is a long haul business. So
yeah,
you don't want to burn bridges. You don't,
yep.
even if that person could be the worst over the phone. One of the things that I find too is like when you're talking to someone and you're calling someone out of the blue, you have to imagine you calling somebody or texting someone and you are just jumping into their living room. So it
Yeah.
could be the best day of their life, it could be the
Mhm.
worst day of their life. And you have to empathize with like you are just appearing in their living room,
Yeah.
and empathetically you have to understand that you have to react in that way.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that makes sense. Yeah. Finding ways to just, that's definitely something that we even train our team on a lot, is just having that empathy and fully hearing and validating what they're going through, wherever it is. What did they experience versus, right? What I heard is something, what's most important to you. And even reiterating that can totally help build that bond of connection and make you more of that consultant that they feel comfortable with. So yeah, that's super, super, super important. Absolutely.
And I think one of the other things that's important to understand too, and this is might be a hard topic as well, but there are a lot of bad agents in our business. And so there's a lot of people that have dealt with agents that aren't particularly great. And so
Mhm.
they have bad experiences with agents in the past. We see it overwhelmingly in our business where there was a broker or someone who just came in, did a bad job, collected their commission, and ran away.
Mhm.
And they feel like dealing with an agent just means negative connotations or a broker.
Sure.
And I think understanding and empathizing with that is probably one of the most important things you can do, because many people who had a bad relationship with an agent doesn't necessarily mean that they're unwilling to work with one, but that they just have trauma from that last relationship that you're then working through. And I know we've overwhelmingly worked with people who, for whatever reason, maybe had something go wrong in a past transaction, particularly in real estate, in our realm, which is often leasing, where you do have a 5 or 10 year lease. You have someone who got stuck with a bad lease for 10 years. And so now they have a really traumatic relationship and they're going out into the market again. And you have to understand that there's that trauma there and you have to work
Sure.
and empathize with it. And many of the agents that fail the most see it as purely transactional in our world.
Mhm.
And you have to empathize and understand that the consumer is always ultimately right. And you have to really empathize with that consumer primacy.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. That empathy really makes a big difference. Yeah, that was actually, it reminds me of one of the books I read a while ago, is on negotiating or something. And it was one of the topics they talked about that you really want to hear from people is not just that I'm right, but like that's right, meaning there's agreement, that there's some type of meeting of the minds. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
empathize with you, you understand me. Like that's right from a mindset perspective. Like that's how you get somewhere negotiating, and that's how you bond with client and provide value, so that you're not just giving bad experiences. So I'm curious too about, I guess, certainly that customer experience. I mean, that's definitely important to us. It's something we talk about a lot. Actually, our mission is to provide a better real estate experience, and so part of that is just in terms of what we do and how we show up, but also I think in a lot of our operations and procedures. I mean, we also, like, we provide additional things of value, like we have a free moving truck for our clients. We also have other things for them to use. I'm curious about, and I don't know how it might play out in your world or in the commercial world, but maybe is there anything maybe specific or tangible that you can share about maybe that you do to help enhance that customer experience and make it better for people?
I think the biggest thing that we do is, because we were a management company first,
Okay.
is we have a tremendous property management background. And so when things go wrong at properties that aren't even our own, that
Yeah.
maybe the landlord isn't doing a great job, we make sure to bring folks from either our team or our subcontractors out to try to help and assist. Because overwhelmingly, there's a lot of bad landlords out there, and you can have done everything right placing somebody. And
Mhm.
sometimes we'll have deals where you did everything right placing somebody, and then the building gets sold to a new company, right? And you had no reason to believe this. And now
Yeah.
this new management company and this new owner is terrible. You
Yeah.
knew the old owner was going to deliver on a lot of things. And now
Mhm.
there's a hotly contested issue. And yes, we have no financial or fiduciary responsibility necessarily at that point. But
Yeah.
I would say, if anything, you have a moral and ethical responsibility to your clients to try to do as right by them as possible. And so
Yeah.
we try to work to help facilitate things, even if it means, just necessarily giving them extra numbers of contractors that maybe they can do work on their own, or working with them to maybe clean up a roof leak. And it could just be as simple as that. And we find that that's really critical, not just from a position of being someone who's known in the industry as doing a great boutique job at kind of helping particularly small to mid-sized clients, but also on top of that, going through and developing those referral networks where somebody knows that they can trust us to do a great job, and they can trust us to make sure that we underpin their business's success.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely helpful for sure. I mean, that's good. You got good property management wing. I don't have that in my business. Sometimes I wish I did, but
and sometimes I wish I didn't. That's I mean, like the thing about property management that's so difficult is the margins are very small.
sure.
Like and so overwhelmingly, we make way more money in brokerage for way less effort than property management. Property management is a wonderful thing to be able to deliver and provide, particularly on our investment side, or also our helping, like in the case of a tenant that maybe isn't being treated right.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual finances, property management is a hard way to make a living. I will tell you that.
Yeah. Well, so it's good. You got the property management helps support the other more profitable parts of the business.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So no, that makes sense. Absolutely. So no, I think about times where, we don't do I don't do a lot with rentals, and we don't have a property management division, but we do, I've sold many properties where I've had exactly what you're talking about happen, right? Like the water heater breaks or something happens right away, like right after closing. Well, this is broken. And if I can just step up in that moment, boom, send someone out. You know what? I don't have a property management person, but I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to send somebody over there, and we're going to take care of it. To me, that's providing a better real estate experience. That's going to that next level and saying, I care more about their satisfaction and what they got. Yeah, maybe it cost me a little bit of money, but it's doing the right thing by the client. So, yeah.
I think it goes beyond the fiduciary responsibility. And when you do go above and beyond the fiduciary responsibility, you tend to get the benefit. Like, I'm a firm believer in that life is all about adding value.
Totally.
And being of service to others, both, from an ethical and moral way, but also from a financial way, is truly how you not only make it in this world in terms of your relationships, but also financially. Yeah. And overwhelmingly, what we found on our podcast, and I know I'm grateful to be on the podcast today, but what we found overwhelmingly is people across the spectrum, be it, industrial or hospitality or office, that go above and beyond for their clients, and to, 5 times back in terms of referrals, in terms of maintaining business relationships. And one of the hardest things to do in our business is acquire new clients. So hold your clients that have done you right dear, and treat them well, because it's a lot harder to go out there and get new clients than it is to bend over and really help a client up when they're struggling. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, those past clients, if you do a great job and you'll get referrals. I mean, this is very much a people business, and referrals matter a lot, as much as we're online and we're doing podcasts and people maybe look at stuff online on the internet. But at the end of the day, if they got a personal recommendation from somebody, that's going to go a long ways. Absolutely. So those are very important. Absolutely. Well, let's see. So, I know we've chatted quite a bit and we've shared a lot of insight. I guess I would be curious. Let's see, maybe I'm a big reader, but maybe if you have a good book or widget or trinket or something else that you think you'd recommend to people that are looking to grow their business, anything that comes to mind?
Well, I'd say Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
I know he's like, the standard, but I remember reading him in, what was it? It was for the first time in maybe the spring of my 1L law year. And I was going to go work in law. And I'd never really worked outside of our, family business besides working at, various summer jobs. Right. And I thought, hey, I might as well read this. Just the tips that he gives are just so basic, but so few people apply them in their life, and apply them religiously, in terms of look that person in the eye when you shake their hand. Just like simple things like make sure you know everyone's name that you're talking to in a conversation can be just game changers, particularly because now that we live in this digital age where so few people, particularly in the younger generation, behave by all those traditional rules and those rules of just general politeness. And so if you can follow those kind of rules, it's a game changer, particularly for the younger folks.
Yeah. No, I think Dale Carnegie's great stuff. I think I read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, years ago. And definitely, you talk about empathy and connection and understanding. Absolutely. You'll learn tons of that just by following some of the stuff Dale Carnegie shares. So,
and it's so simple, right? All the rules are so simple, and most people don't apply them. And I know my grandmother gave me the book, and she's like, "This is the book my father, who is the original, essentially kind of founder in many ways of our business, that he followed all these rules to the T, and he made it in his career often by following these rules and treating people with kindness and respect and trying to serve others. And I think overwhelmingly, if you apply those basic rules, you can be incredibly successful.
Yeah, for sure. So it's simple, yet not always easy, right? So
and that's the hard thing of our business, right? The hardest part of our business is actually applying the rules. The rules are easy. It's applying them every day, making those cold calls, following up with clients. That's what breaks people. It's not, we're not playing in a world of astrophysics. It's just applying the simple rules every day.
Simple rules every day. That's right. It's get up, go to work every day, do what you got to do. So I get that. Cool. Well, Gordon, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. I guess before we wrap up, any last words of anything you wanted to mention or questions or anything else on your mind you wanted to share?
So if you're interested at all in the Chicagoland real estate market or the Southern Wisconsin real estate market, where I also transact, you can check out our blog. It's at bvco.com. That's Victor Charlie Oscar.com. And we have a podcast, the Real Finds Podcast, where we have a lot of voices on, and maybe we'll have you on soon, Josh.
Sounds good. I'd love to.
And thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing some value with our listeners today. So
I hope so.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, again, this is the Better Agent Podcast, and I'm your host, Josh Lavik, and I appreciate you meeting with Gordon today. Gordon Lamphere out of the Chicago and Southern Wisconsin area commercial. So again, this is the Better Agent Podcast. Thank you.